less, for quite some time now, at least 100 years, depending on how you count. It's been the poorest nation in the hemisphere. But there have been periods of relative brightness in Haiti. Today is not one of them. That country is in what appears to be total collapse, with no governing authority apart from roving bands of armed young men. Gangs have seized the country effectively. The prime minister has resigned. It's hard to know exactly what's going on in Haiti because you really can't go there right now.
Welcome to the state of affairs in Haiti, where chaos reigns supreme and governance is little more than a distant memory. Armed gangs roam the streets, the prime minister has thrown in the towel, and it's anyone's guess what tomorrow will bring. But hey, at least we can't go there to see it firsthand, right?
So there's clearly a lot going on here. It's hard to understand exactly what all of it means, but one thing Americans should keep in mind is there could be a massive, what we refer to as a refugee crisis, very soon, where a lot of the people you saw in that video wind up in boats headed for Florida. So this does affect us, and of course, this is our hemisphere, which we supposedly oversee, make calmer, more prosperous, and stable. So why haven't the people in charge done that after all these years and a number of military interventions into Haiti by the U.S. government? And where are the billions of dollars we were told the Clinton family, through the Clinton Foundation, was sending to Haiti?
Brace yourselves, folks, because it looks like we've got a crisis on our hands. With Haiti spiraling into oblivion, there's a very real possibility of a refugee influx heading straight for our shores.
Others have asked this question. Donald Trump, for example, back in 2016 at a presidential debate. Watch.
And you take a look at the people of Haiti. I was at a little Haiti the other day in Florida, and I want to tell you, they hate the Clintons, because what's happened in Haiti with the Clinton Foundation is a disgrace. And you know it, and they know it, and everybody knows it.
So what is the answer to that question? Where did all that money go? And why isn't the Biden administration helping in any way?
Remember that time Donald Trump called out the Clinton Foundation's shenanigans in Haiti? Yeah, seems like ancient history now. But here's the million-dollar question. Where did all that money disappear to?
What are they doing to prepare for what will quite obviously be a mass emigration of people from Haiti to the state of Florida? So to answer these and maybe some other questions,
Haiti was not always under the rule of gangs. If you go back a few years under the dictatorship of Duvalier,
yes,
there was, Haiti had other problems, but not gang-related problems. Then when at the fall of Duvalier, and for you to understand, under the Duvalier government, there was, the security forces had about 320,000 security officials. You had paramilitary, and then you had military, and then you had police.
Brace yourselves, Florida, because it looks like there's a storm brewing. With Haiti teetering on the edge of collapse, it's only a matter of time before the mass exodus begins. So what's the plan? Is anyone in charge even bothering to prepare for the inevitable flood of refugees? Or are they too busy playing political games to care?
And all of those deaths and entries onto disability are timed with the onset of the vaccination rollout. And all these discussions about alternative explanations for why that might be, they all fail, because you cannot argue against the temporal association. I mean, time with that vaccination rollout is when all of the numbers started going sideways. The excess mortality started to skyrocket, the disability claims started to skyrocket. So it's an immense cost, Tucker.
The great vaccination rollout, where all our problems magically disappeared. Or so they'd like us to believe. But as the numbers started climbing and the mortality rates shot through the roof, it became painfully clear that something had gone horribly wrong. And try as they might to spin alternative explanations, the temporal association speaks volumes. Time and again, the vaccine rollout coincided with the skyrocketing death toll and disability claims. So, yeah, I'd say the cost has been nothing short of immense. Tucker.
in this country, what kind of death toll are we looking at?
So just the most kind of alarming data that I've been writing about is just in 2023 alone, in the first 9 months, we had what's called an excess mortality of 158,000 Americans. Now, that's compared to baseline death rates in this country to before the pandemic. But this is in 2023. I mean, we've had Omicron now for 2 years, which is a mild variant. Not that many go to the hospital.
We're about to dive into some sobering statistics. In just the first 9 months of 2023, we witnessed an excess mortality of 158,000 Americans. Let that sink in. That's compared to baseline death rates before the pandemic reared its ugly head. And mind you, this is with Macron, the mild variant, floating around for the past 2 years. You'd think things would be looking up, but alas, not so many make it to the hospital before they take their final breath.
When they fell, the military took over in 1986. From 1986 to 1990, they had a success, 4 different military governments, and there was absolutely no gangs. But there was, military rule. In 1991, President Jean-Bertrand Aristide came to power in an election, and he had a deep distrust for the military and also for private sector, for investors. So basically, he started introducing a culture of what was called at the time popular bases.
Let's take a trip down memory lane to the days of military rule in Haiti. From 1986 to 1990, the military held the reins, and surprise, surprise, no gangs to be found. But then along came President Jean-Bertrand Aristide in 1991, and with him a deep distrust for the military and private sector. So what did he do? Introduce a culture of popular bases, whatever that means.
There was 3 years of military rule, and then in 1994, Aristide was restored to Haiti by the Clinton administration at the time, and Haiti basically went from the 320,000 security official to basically 0. And the army at the time was disbanded. The police was inexistent. So the international forces had to come in through, the Marines came in for a short period of time.
Fast forward to 1994, and Aristide gets the royal treatment from the Clinton administration, restoring him to power in Haiti. But here's the kicker. The security forces went from 20,000 to basically 0 overnight. The army was disbanded, the police were non-existent, and Uncle Sam had to swoop in with the Marines to save the day. Talk about a wild ride.
When you look at what's driving those 158,000 deaths, and by the way, that's more than all wars since Vietnam, including Vietnam. That's more people dying than we've lost in wars.
In 9 months.
In 9 months of 2023.
Vietnam took 11 years.
Exactly, in 9 months. Now, all of that 158,000 is not all from, let's say, vaccines. There's a portion that is from. Obviously, we have other societal ills which are troubling us. We have a drug epidemic. We have deaths of despair. But those are actually pretty well accounted for. And
Well,
yet
those have been going on for some time.
Exactly.
Now let's dissect those 150,000 deaths, shall we? Sure, not all of them can be pinned on vaccines. We've got running rampant, a drug epidemic on our hands, and deaths of despair to contend with. But here's where it gets dicey. Fentanyl didn't just waltz into the country in 2021. And who's bearing the brunt of it all? Not the elderly, surprisingly. Nope, it's the young, healthy, and gainfully employed folks who are dropping like flies. So, what's the verdict?
You can't blame all that. Like, fentanyl did not just arrive in this country in the third quarter of 2021. And even more troubling with the data is, who is dying? It's not the elderly. I mean, our life expectancy in this country dropped by 3 years in a span of 3 years. Now, who has to die arithmetically for that to happen? Young people. And what the data is screaming is that it's not only the young people that are dying, but they're the healthiest and most employed. So the employed is a risk factor for death now. And so you're left with a conclusion looking at this data.
Drum roll, please. The data is screaming a grim reality. It's not just the elderly or the infirm meeting their demise. Nope. It's the young and the restless, the ones who should be in the prime of their lives. And to top it all off, being employed is now a risk factor for death. Wrap your head around that one. So what's the takeaway from all this? Your guess is as good as mine.
The UN came in thereafter. And that lasted up until, right before 2000. And Aristide left, and Preval came in, and Aristide came back from 2000 to 2004. And when he was ousted for a second time, in 2004, then there was complete breakdown of law and order because at the time, the gangs, what was called at the time chimeras, were very strong. And then they launched what's called Operation Baghdad.
Ah, the UN to the rescue, or so they thought. From the early 2000s onwards, Haiti became a playground for international intervention. The Irish came, the UN came, and billions of dollars flowed in like there was no tomorrow. But did it make a difference? Not really. If anything, it just fueled the flames of chaos and corruption.
And basically what that operation was, it was basically gang warfare, gang attacking institutions, attacking the remnants of the police, etc. But the police was inexistent and it was very weak. So basically, and that was the case in 2004. In 2004, that triggered what we all knew as the UN forces MINUSTA came into Haiti from 2004 to 2017 and spent $13 billion at $1 billion a year for that force, which was about 7,000 soldiers and 2,000 police.
Operation Baghdad, huh? Sounds more like a recipe for disaster than a peacekeeping mission. Picture this: gangs running amok, attacking anything and everything in sight. And what's the response? A ragtag group of soldiers and police officers, barely able to hold their own against the onslaught. So much for restoring law and order.
You're left with two big questions. Why was there an explosion in the youngest, dying in the youngest and healthiest sectors of society? And why did the employed fare far worse than those that weren't? And it's particularly white collar. White collar more than gray collar, more than blue collar. And so you're left with the question.
Wait, fared worse?
Fared worse.
That's the opposite of what you would expect.
100%. So why is the healthiest, most educated, wealthiest sectors of our labor force dying at higher rates than those that are what are called gray collar, like cops and teachers, versus blue collar?
Here's a head scratcher for you. Why are the youngest and healthiest among us dropping like flies? And why are the white collar workers taking the hardest hit? You'd think the educated, wealthy elite would have it all figured out, right? Wrong. Turns out they're keeling over at higher rates than their blue collar counterparts. Talk about turning the tables.
And you have to ask yourself, what happened in the American white collar workplace?
That's crazy.
Never. This is unprecedented.
Because that's the healthiest segment of society. People who are dragging
always have been.
themselves out of bed every morning.
Always have been. For very good reason. They tend to be the most educated,
yes,
employed, wealthy, and so generally the healthiest. They have all the risk factors.
Fittest, best food.
100%. Exercise, and that's what my practice is full of today, is formerly really successful, healthy people who are now effectively disabled.
Even worse than I understood.
Oh, it's been hard to watch.
It's like a twisted game of survival of the fittest. Only the fittest are the first to fall. These once healthy, successful individuals are now knocking on death's door with no rhyme or reason to their demise. They did everything right, ate well, exercised, you name it. And yet here they are, disabled and defeated. It's enough to make you question everything you thought you knew about health and wellness.
There was relative calm. There was, very little gang activity because they were scared of the international force. But that force had a lot of issues. They never really trained the after UN.
Yes.
So there was no army trained, the police that was trained was still very weak because it's a civilian force. Haiti today is the only country in the Western Hemisphere outside of Costa Rica that has no military and that has the biggest gang activity after El Salvador.
So what's the deal with Haiti's civilian force? Turns out, they're a far cry from being a well-oiled machine. Despite the relative calm, the lack of gang activity was more a testament to fear than effective policing. And as for the military, well, let's just say they're not exactly top tier. With no proper training or support, it's no wonder Haiti's security forces are struggling to keep the peace.
A lot of international community, friends of Haiti, or so-called friends of Haiti, say that Haiti does not need a military, does not need a strong police force. This is what happens today. So that created a void, and that created the situation where we have today, where that void is filled by gangs, armed groups all over, the popular neighborhoods, huge neighborhoods of 500,000 people, 200,000 people, and they're ruled by gangs. So it complicates the situation tremendously.
Ah, the so-called friends of Haiti, preaching about how the country doesn't need a military or a strong police force. Well, take a look around. This is what happens when you strip a nation of its defenses. Gangs and armed groups run rampant, turning once vibrant neighborhoods into war zones. It's a recipe for disaster, and we're all left picking up the pieces.
And you see it all over the West. You see it in the permissiveness of immigration. You see it in the permissiveness of our kids.
We're at sort of an end stage now. This has been going on for a long time, and you tied it to immigration, I think, correctly. And maybe the thing this topic and immigration have in common is that we're unable to defend ourselves from invasion or from crimes being perpetrated against our kids.
Look, it's not just Haiti feeling the heat, it's a global epidemic. From lax immigration policies to the normalization of children, we're witnessing the downfall of society as we know it. We're at a tipping point, folks, and the common thread here is our inability to protect ourselves from invasion and the vile crimes perpetrated against our most vulnerable. It's enough to make you wonder, where did we go wrong?
All the data was consistent with this vaccine being the most dangerous vaccine of all time. There were more reports for the vaccine than for all vaccines in history combined.
Truckers are now refusing, in response to what's happened to Trump in the state of New York, to deliver goods, essential goods, to New York. That would include groceries and fuel.
This vaccine's making history with more reports than all combined? Now truckers are slamming brakes because of Trump in New York? Buckle up, New York, the drama's just beginning.
We found out later that this VAERS system, which they set up to monitor for safety, had triggered 770 different safety signals. Now, normally, a vaccine only will trigger 0 safety signals. It'd be really unusual for a vaccine to trigger any safety signals in VAERS, especially because the way they define these safety signals makes it almost impossible for a vaccine to trigger a safety signal.
Safety signals should be safe, right? Not in the vaccine world. 770 alarms? It's like ignoring a fire alarm while your house burns. Their definition? A hide and seek with truth.
But this vaccine triggered 770 safety signals. So what did the CDC do about it? They basically told no one. The only reason that we even found out about it is because someone issued a Freedom of Information Act request to the CDC.
Ah, the good old CDC, keeping secrets like it's their full-time job. So, apparently they decided to keep mum about these 770 safety signals. Classic move, CDC. If you want to know what's going on, you better start sharpening those Freedom of Information Act requests. Who knew transparency was such a hard pill to swallow?
In a civilized country, the one thing you're absolutely not allowed to do is get creepy with other people's kids. That is not allowed. It's the worst thing. And even now, go ahead and try that in a place where the people have self-respect, like Africa or Eastern Europe. You will get, and you will absolutely deserve it. But in this country, where the population has been instructed for decades to hate itself, there is very little resistance, if you think about it, to organized attempts to get creepy with your kids.
Creepy with kids? Oh no, we don't do that in civilized countries. Unless you're talking about a place where people apparently have self-respect and a knack for handing out justice on a silver platter. But here, well, let's just say the bar for decency seems to be getting lower by the day. Organized attempts to get creepy with your kids? Yeah, because that's exactly what we needed on the menu of societal issues.
In school libraries, drag queen story hours, Rachel Levine, the fake admiral posing as a girl, encouraging your boys to, quote, switch genders. It's absolutely everywhere, despite their attempts to tell you that it's not. Of course it is. Look around. Well, Robbie Starbuck has noticed he's just directed a movie about all of this called The War on Children, which is exactly what it is.
In school libraries, drag queen story hours, and a fake admiral posing as a girl. Sounds like the perfect recipe for a conspiracy theorist's dream. But wait, they're trying to convince us it's not everywhere? Please, just take a look around. The signs are as clear as day. And now we've got a movie director stepping in to highlight this so-called war on children. Well, isn't that just peachy? Because nothing says quality entertainment like a dystopian reality check.
Could you show me the output of the analysis of the safety signal analysis you're supposed to do? And so they got back a spreadsheet showing 770 safety signals were triggered. That is mind-blowing. That is not a 3-alarm fire. That is a 770 alarm fire.
All right, buckle up because we're diving into the safety signal analysis. So someone decided to peek behind the curtain and what they found. Brace yourselves, 770 safety signals. Yeah, you heard that right. Not just 1 or 2, but a whopping 770. I can practically hear the sirens blaring from here.
So tell us what you found and what you have found and what your conclusions are.
Well, what I found was all the data was consistent with this vaccine being the most dangerous vaccine of all time. I mean, there are more reports on this vaccine in the VAERS system, which is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. It's the official system for reporting adverse events for a vaccine. It's set up by the U.S. government. It's run by the U.S. government. And there were more reports for the vaccine than for all vaccines in history combined.
Cue the dramatic music because we're about to unveil the findings. So, after crunching the numbers, what do we have? Hold on to your seats because apparently all signs point to this vaccine being the grand champion of danger. We're talking more reports than you can shake a syringe at. The vaccine has practically broken the record books, leaving all other vaccines in the dust. And guess who's keeping score? None other than the U.S. government. Talk about a plot twist.
Again, a healthy society protects its children. That's the whole point of having a society. That's why we have civilization. Otherwise, we just let young men do whatever they want, or the people with rule over the rest of us. But we don't do that because we want to protect our children. And when a society ceases to make that a priority, that society ceases to exist. So this is a fight worth having.
Ah, the age-old question. What separates us from the savages? Well, apparently it's protecting our children. Because let's face it, without them, we're just a bunch of wild animals with access to weaponry. So when a society starts slacking on the whole protecting the kids thing, it's basically signing its own death warrant. Time to gear up for the fight, folks. Our civilization is counting on it.
What's your top line conclusion about the attempt to our kids? Like, what is this exactly?
This is a near planetary scale psychological operation to usher in a new form of communism. And I know to some people that might sound extreme, but
No.
you know, to give a little insight, my family came from Cuba where communism happened in a flash. And I don't think a lot of Americans realize just how quickly this can happen. And we're well down the path. I would call it probable at this point.
Strap in for some conspiracy theory 101. According to our expert, the attempt to set our kids isn't just some run-of-the-mill scheme. Oh no, it's a near planetary scale psychological operation. And guess what's lurking at the end of this twisted plot? None other than a new form of communism. Cue the gasps and dramatic music. I mean, who knew drag queen story hours were the first step towards the Red Scare 2.0?
Seize his assets. Just, we don't like the guy, we can just take his stuff. So big picture, this has been tried in other countries, South Africa, for example, and over time it just doesn't work. I mean, maybe you win the upcoming election in November, congratulations, but what do you preside over when you do? Is anyone actually going to be doing business in New York? What's the tax base going to look like in 10 years? Well, of course, you know the answer to that. Everyone does. And yet no one's doing anything about it, just pretending it's all about Trump.
Let's talk about seizing assets, shall we? Because apparently, if we don't like someone, we can just swoop in and take all their stuff. Sounds like a fun game of Monopoly, right? But here's the kicker. This tactic has been tried before, and spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. Just ask South Africa. So, sure, maybe you win the election, but what's left to govern over? Is anyone even going to stick around in New York for the long haul? It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck, but hey, at least we can blame it all on Trump, right?
I think the first and most important point is this. You can tell who truly has power in any society by looking at who can persecute an innocent person in broad daylight and get away with it completely. They can announce that they're going to do it, then they can do it, they can finish the job, they can impose the outrageous fines, the outrageous punishments, and they can say, I just did it. And the whole entire society, the whole system can either look the other way or applaud. And so this is all part of the performative illusion, where she stands up there at the press conference, we're the underdog, we took on the big, powerful Donald Trump.
The power dynamics of society laid bare. It's like a twisted game of who's got the upper hand. You see, true power isn't about strength or influence. It's about who can persecute an innocent person in broad daylight and get away with it scot-free. They can announce their intentions, carry them out, and bask in their victory while the rest of society either turns a blind eye or gives them a round of applause. It's all part of the show, isn't it? The performance where the underdog stands up to the big, bad wolf. Bravo, bravo.
We're fighting, and we're fighting as hard as we can to make sure that it doesn't happen. But when the opposition party that is, the quote ruling class owns every cultural institution, and you've essentially got children locked into their indoctrination centers for more time than they spend with their parents or their religious leaders, the outcome is truly horrific. What we just watched with Layla Jane, the way I was raised, it would have been considered barbarism.
Welcome to the battlefield of cultural warfare, where the ruling class holds all the cards and the opposition fights tooth and nail to reclaim some semblance of sanity. But when every cultural institution is under their thumb, and our children spend more time in indoctrination centers than with their own families, well, the outcome is downright chilling. Remember Layla Jane? Back in the day, that kind of barbarism would have warranted the death penalty for the perpetrators. But alas, we've entered a realm of sleepwalking, where adults need a good shake to snap out of it.
And the appropriate result would have been the death penalty for any adults involved in the mutilation of the child. But we veered into this territory where people are sleepwalking, and that's why we made this film, because really, truly, adults in America needed to be shaken awake.
Why would you allow your own children to be destroyed and mutilated? What's the thinking?
In this mass psychological operation, a lot of it has actually played out in a way where it's influenced the parents as well to believe that there's something wrong with them if they question this, that, they're some kind of, ideologue that's insane if they are not okay with their child suddenly deciding they're a different gender.
Let's talk about the mutilation of innocence, shall we? In a sane world, those responsible would face the ultimate consequence. But we've veered so far off course that it takes a wake-up call in the form of a film to shake us from our stupor. Why, oh why would parents stand idly by as their children are destroyed and mutilated? Well, it seems the powers that be have convinced them that questioning it makes them the real lunatics. After all, what kind of parent wouldn't cheer on their child's sudden gender switch?
You took on the leader of a voiceless opposition party in this country. What you did is you are the ruling class. You are the ones who set the terms, who set the conditions, who control how all of our legal system and democracy runs. And then you're going after the man whose job it is to stand up for the dispossessed and the disenfranchised of this country. The message being, if you out there choose among you a leader to stand up to us, we will decapitate him. That's the message they're sending.
Congratulations, you've taken on the voiceless opposition party in this country. But let's not kid ourselves. You're the ones pulling the strings, setting the rules, and controlling the entire game. And now, you're going after the one person whose job is to stand up for the downtrodden and disenfranchised. The message is loud and clear. Challenge us, and we'll cut off the head of anyone who dares oppose us.
You can be unhappy about the border invasion. You can be unhappy about formalized racism discriminating against you and your children and your relatives. You can be unhappy about the decay of our cities and our system, the ruin of our education system. You can be unhappy about all your money, your tax dollars, your property taxes being stolen from you and redistributed to people who have no right to be here, to welfare cheats, and to criminals. And if you choose someone to stand up to all of this, watch us ruin him. Watch us destroy him. And even if he gets into office, as he did in 2017, watch us launch a soft coup day after day after day.
Feel free to be unhappy about the border invasion, the betrayal by former allies, or the discrimination against you and your loved ones. You can lament the decay of our cities, the broken education system, and the plundering of your hard-earned dollars, but dare to choose someone to stand up to it all and watch as we tear them limb from limb.